Hi everyone, welcome to the One DEI thing. DEI stands for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I am Natasha Green, the project lead for this series, and I am super excited that you decided to join or listen to this on replay. Shout out to the folks who will be replaying this. You get mad love from me also. This is an AnitaB.org webinar series in which men share one thing they did to improve their company's culture. Absolutely. There are probably tons of things these individuals are doing, but I decided one thing would be enough in the time we have together. All speakers wanted to create a culture so that employees feel that they can grow, learn, and have equal opportunity for advancement in their highest individual potential, no matter who they are, where they're from, what their race is, how they look, or even how old they are. Each speaker believes that an individual potential should not be restricted because of discriminatory practices. This initiative stems from AnitaB.org's mission, where we envision a future where the people who imagine and build technology mirror the people and societies for whom they build it. We do a lot of work connecting, guiding, and inspiring women and our allies to ensure anywhere you see technology being built, you will also see an equal representation of women building and leading those technological products or services, and getting paid fairly. I believe in order for this to happen, many individuals at all levels in the organization will have to advocate and do their part, wherever they are in the organizational chart. That person can shift an organization's culture to be inclusive and a place where everyone feels like they belong and that they are reaching their full potential. We thank you for joining us today, so please grab a notepad and pen and take some notes.
Thanks, Natasha, and it's been great getting to know you over the last year plus, and I will save all my profanity for the Q&A session since I won't record it. So just quickly about me, I have 25 years of experience. I started on Wall Street, then I went to venture capital. I read the book Moneyball by Michael Lewis, thought I wanted to be Billy Beane, and I navigated my way and networked my way into baseball. I worked for the New York Mets minor league affiliate, the Toronto Blue Jays minor league affiliate. Realized that was not the right lifestyle for me. Networked and navigated my way into business school. I went to business school in New York, and from there I networked and figured out ways to get into American Express. Worked at American Express for 6 years. Leading business development teams, customer success teams, operations, and marketing. I was there for about 6 years, and I really wanted to move into the big tech space. I submitted my resume to lots of different companies, including Google, which was my top choice. I think I submitted resumes about 5 times there, and no response. Eventually, a buddy of mine was on a Temple softball team with someone at Google, put me in touch with this guy. He spoke to me. He liked my background. He put my resume on the fast track through a referral system. And 11 interviews later, I got hired by Google. I led global operations and customer support teams at Google. I was there for about 6 years. Then left to work at a couple of startups. And the startup space was, I thought the grass was going to be greener there. It was not. And then I got recruited to Facebook to lead data management operations at Facebook. I was there for about 1.5 years. When my boss there left there to go to Tableau, and I stayed in contact with him, and he recruited me over to Tableau. And 2 months after I joined Tableau, Tableau was acquired by Salesforce. So now we are part of Salesforce, which is a really exciting, great company, really focused on increasing diversity. Just a little trivia fact here, if anybody looks at www.equality.com, Salesforce was prescient enough to actually acquire that URL. So it'll go to Salesforce's equality efforts, which I'm really proud of. We have a ways to go, but we have goals out there, and we're holding ourselves accountable to that. So that's me on a professional side. On a personal side, I live in Brooklyn with my 3 kids, 2 cockapoos, 2 cockatiels, and 1 wife. And since we're going personal here, my sister Robin is on the phone here. So her face is dark as well here as everybody else's is. But so my only sibling is here as well. So that's a little bit about me. And before I go into the presentation, there were 5 questions that Natasha sent over to me that I did some thinking about and would like to answer. One was, how did I come to the realization that things had to change? So I've, I'm, as people can see my image, I'm a pasty white dude. I grew up in Long Island. I had grew up with parents who were married, able to pay for my education and everything. I always had everything that I needed and pretty much everything I've wanted. As a kid, I was probably annoying and spoiled. And my sister, who's on the phone, I remember we were on a vacation when we were 14 years old, complaining about that the hotel did not have cable while we were glamping in Yosemite National Park. But as years have passed and times have changed, I've really become much more appreciative of what I've been given, and what privilege I've received just by the luck of the draw. Then lots of things have been going on with society over the last 10 plus years, if not longer than that. Especially this summer, what happened with George Floyd was really like, it didn't impact me directly, but just seeing how the country reacted to that was quite clear that there has been systemic racism existing in this country for hundreds of years. Also, my wife is reading How to Be Anti-Racist to My Kids by Ibram Kendi. And I didn't read the whole thing, but I listened to it as I'm cleaning up the kitchen. And he talks in that book about how it's not enough to be not racist or not sexist, but you really have to take more of a proactive approach. And Ibram Kendi calls it anti-racist, to take action. Feminist, to take action in support of women, underrepresented people. So I'm doing that in the second half of my life. It makes me feel better about myself. It's a right thing to do. I've been fortunate enough with my privilege that I want to give some of that back. Next question was, what's a mental process like for you as an individual to take steps to create the change? So for better or worse, I was just listening on a podcast about agreeableness factor, how agreeable an individual needs to be. And they say, I forget which podcast this was. It might have been a Tim Ferriss podcast, but there's an agreeableness factor, and they rank people from 0 to 10. 0 would be like a golden retriever, where they're just always happy-go-lucky and always want to be loved. And 10 is Dr. Spock, where Dr. Spock from Star Trek, and where he just leverages facts and data, and that's what he goes by. So I don't think I'm all the way out to the Dr. Spock level, but I'm someone who believes in facts, data, logic. So it's been pretty easy for me to see that things are not right with a lot of the diversity numbers and the quality numbers, and things have to change. So it was a very easy mental process for someone like me who works very logically and what I consider an irrational method. How to decide to roll out some new initiatives over the course of my career, and I'll talk about some of those that I did, but basically some ideas I come up with myself and some ideas I just copy. So I'll talk a little bit in the presentation about a very good practice that I learned from Facebook. They call it the diversity slate approach, or it's similar to the Rooney Rule, which was founded by Art Rooney, I believe, from the NFL, which the whole intent there was, in the NFL back in 1980s, there were 1 or 0 black head coaches, despite the fact that the NFL is probably 60 to 80% black. I don't know what the metrics are. So they created this rule by this owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers called the Rooney Rule, that there needs to be at least 1 underrepresented minority at every head coach interview. And what that's done is enable a lot more people to at least get a seat at the table to be considered for the role. It still hasn't increased the equality and diversity to where it needs to be. I think there's probably 4 to 6 head coaches out of 32 that are of color in the NFL, but it did start to make some active impact there. And similarly, Facebook has rolled out a program that they call the diversity slate approach. So when we interviewed candidates, we were required to have at least one diverse candidate at the interview loop stage. And I think we can do better than just one, but at least that's a start. And I've basically stolen that from Facebook. And ever since I learned that in Facebook, I've done that with all my teams. And I require that we have a diverse slate of candidates being interviewed. There's also a lot of research that the people that are interviewing the candidate should be diverse as well. And I've done that since I've done that for like a decade, just to make sure you have a diverse slate of interviewers. But now I'm being much more proactive and requiring myself and my team to have a diverse slate of candidates as well. Next question that was asked for me to start with was, how was accountability established, or was accountability established? So right now, I am not currently required to have that diverse slate approach. And right now I'm not actually hiring people, but I just always hold myself accountable to that. I track and manage things in spreadsheets. When we hired our 2 MBAs for this summer at Tableau, which is a part of Salesforce, of the 30 people that we interviewed, 65% of the candidates were of diverse backgrounds, underrepresented backgrounds. So we wound up not, so I track it on a spreadsheet essentially, and I do that. I hold myself accountable. And what's happening now in society is a lot of these big tech companies are holding themselves accountable through reporting and metrics. And again, if you go to www.equality.com, or you just Google what the diversity rates are at Facebook and Amazon and Google and Microsoft, these are all publicly disclosed now, which is a good first step of measuring some of these diversity metrics. Now the companies need to make a bigger difference in that. And that's another reason why I am taking a more active role. So when I left Google in 2016, Google was about 2.7% Black. 4 years later, they're 3.7% or 3.8% Black. They're moving in the right direction, but I don't really feel like waiting for till 2100 until we get fair representation. And similar on the woman front, I believe big like technology is about 25% women. And at some of the more progressive companies like Salesforce, if you look at our website, it's about 33% are women. Google's about 32 or 33%. Facebook's a little bit more. But last time I checked, there's about 50% of the population that are women. So we should get more of a fair and equitable distribution. And I'm looking forward to continuing to push that. So those are the questions that I had. Now let me go through the presentation. Do you guys see my screen? Can I get either a thumbs up or a yes if people see where it says increasing diversity in tech workplaces by double digits?
Yep, I can see it.
Okay, cool. So let me move to the next slide. So this is how people typically get jobs. I didn't do a lot of formal research on this, but I'll show you some data that I have about myself and also from speaking to tons of people. People either get their jobs from who they know, their network. So from friends, from family, from academic institutions that they went to in their alumni network, from current or former colleagues that they've worked with, from industry events. So that in its own is a very biased approach because not everybody has the same power of their network. Then on the right side is more of a meritocracy in terms of what you know. So what your resume says that you do, or what LinkedIn says that you do, or what you know that you can do. And the way people get jobs that way is through a cold application. So submitting an application online, cold application through a third-party site. So submitting it through Glassdoor, LinkedIn, Indeed, so on and so forth. Or perhaps recruiters reach out to you, and they're reaching out to you often based on your LinkedIn profile. So if you look at that, even though it's like 5-3 on here, if you look at actually how people are getting jobs, and if people here think about how they got their jobs, and when we open up the Q&A, I'd love to hear how you got your last job. My guess is it would be more in the left-hand column than the right-hand column. And the challenge with that is it works well for people that have that good network. and have received privilege of knowing a lot of people and having deep relationships, but it works against people that have not had that same fortunate background. This will make you go blind a little bit, but this is my career progression. And I tracked my career since I got my first W-2. When I was 14 years old, I bought a $1,400 worth of baseball cards, and my parents said they would foot me the bill as long as I got a job. So I got a job at Wallbounds, which is a local grocery store in Long Island in the New York area, making $5 an hour, which was good then because minimum wage back then I think was $3.85. So I was pretty excited to get the $5 an hour. The ones in red are the ones that I got. I landed those jobs through just my pure hustle and meritocracy, submitting a resume, no one talking on my behalf. However, 16 of the 20 companies that I've worked at have been because of people that I've known. And I've even classified that in the third column. Some of these have been because of nepotism. The Restaurant Depot, I was hired because my aunt worked there and she put in a word for me. When I worked at Arnold and S. Bleichorder, my dad happened to work there and he put in a good word for me. So some of those things benefited me just because of who I knew and who I was born to. And a lot of these further on in my career have been built because of my network. Like as my network gets stronger, it actually helps me, helps my privilege, helps my ability to succeed. And that's what I'm really trying to call attention to allies, to people out there, to be cognizant of that, to be more proactive in terms of realizing that we're not talking about a level playing field here. And we as people in leadership, making hiring decisions, need to be more conscious, more aware, and use their seat at the table to bring others along to that table. So people will go blind here, but this is another thing that I learned from, I did this leadership training at Facebook. I don't know if anybody here has done the exercise or heard of the exercise called the privilege walk. And basically what you do is you stand up in a room with 40 people or however many people, and we can't do that here virtually. I see Kathleen gave a thumbs up, so she's apparently heard of this before. It's actually it was a very memorable exercise for me because me and about 40 other leaders at Facebook at the time stood up in a line, all in the same line. And then every time the moderator read out a question, you either took a step back or step forward or you remain neutral. So if there was a question, such as if one or both of your parents were white collar professionals, doctor, lawyer, et cetera, take one step forward and you take a step forward there. On another question, if you've ever had to skip a meal or were hungry because there was not enough money to buy food when you were growing up, take one step back. So you continue to do this. And I just have a small representation of the questions on here and you can look at that link for others. But you basically do that. And at the end of the exercise, you realize that everybody is starting at a very different starting spot, a starting place in that race for life or career or success or for what have you. I just looked at these. I think there's 20 questions on this slide. I just did the math in my head, not right now, but before I did this presentation, and I was 9 steps ahead already, just from my background, my experience, and so forth. So again, like this is another thing that has motivated me throughout my career to be appreciative of the privilege that I've received for whatever reason I've received it, but also to realize that for the folks that are starting 1 step back, 2 steps back in the starting blocks, to help them along, to help them get caught up to the pack. I only have 2 more slides and I'll open this up to questions. So here's some suggestions that I have of what people in power, what people with privilege, what people that are making decisions can do. 1, require your recruiters to provide you with a diverse set of candidates. If you're a hiring manager, you have some influence over the recruiter. Ensure that they are getting a good set of candidates for you and keep pushing back. I've developed a relationship of being very difficult with recruiters. I think I've gone through 6 recruiters in my time since joining Tableau. And I've worked with a couple recently that I really like and really appreciate and are really bringing me a good proactive source of candidates. But I've developed a not so pleasant relationship with the recruiting team because I kind of demand a lot from my recruiter partners. But you can do that. You don't have to, maybe you can be a little less rude than I was, but you should demand a lot of your recruiting team. Secondly, post on LinkedIn, and post on and be cognizant of not just posting on your network in LinkedIn, which is naturally going to be part of your own filter and social and demographic bubble, but you can also post it more broadly than that. This is something that I learned a couple of jobs back. A lot of big companies have employee resource groups. So there's usually a group for Black people, women, differently able, military veterans. I was at Google, I was part of Juglers, which is for Jewish Googlers. And I was part of Greglers for old Googlers, because anyone over 40, actually, they let anybody into these groups. But there were different groups that people can join based on what affinities they have. I have actively joined the Bold group at Salesforce, which is for Black individuals. I've joined the Latino Force group as well. I've joined the Vet Force. And when I have jobs to post, I haven't done it yet at Salesforce because I haven't had jobs to post recently, but I do post it in these groups. And you do get diverse internal candidates, and also those diverse internal candidates know diverse external candidates. So that helps as well. Fourth, share with different affinity groups. So I love working with Anita B, but I've also reached out to Black Girls Who Code, Lesbians Who Tech, Silicon Africa on Facebook. All these groups are more than happy to help advertise roles that you have, and that will help you get a more diverse pipeline of talent. Hold yourself accountable for the diverse slate approach. So even though your company may not require that, you should require it of yourself, that you're gonna have at least one, you can even push yourself for at least half diverse candidates. Mentor people differently than yourself. So Google had this great program called the Sage Guru program, where there's a lot of information out there that underrepresented women, Black, Latino, differently abled, have major imposter syndrome. And I can get into that with a Q&A if people have questions about that and they don't have sponsors and their network. I go out of my way to mentor people that are different than me. Google had a great program where they would match senior leaders with Black and Latino junior level employees. That was a fantastically rewarding experience. I'm still in touch. Like I actually mentored a woman at Google. I advised her to go to Facebook. She went to Facebook. I wound up following her to Facebook. We wound up reconnecting at Facebook. She wound up going to HBS, Harvard Business School. And now she's working for A16Z. And I'm reaching out to her now because I'm starting a side business, and I'm reaching out to her for advice now. So it's been great to work with Sydney, but it's also been beneficial to me. Not that I expected that to pay off, but it's been a great relationship. And then be an ally. Do what you can. If you see something, say something. Don't let this shit continue. And I know I'm being recorded and I use some profanity there, but whatever. There is stuff that people can be doing better. And especially if you're someone of power or of influence. I'm not that powerful. I'm like 6 levels below Mark Benioff. But whatever. I have a little bit of power and a little bit of influence. Say something, do something. Don't let the status quo continue, because otherwise we're going to still have 25% of women in tech and 3% of Blacks in tech. And I don't know what the Latino number is off the top of my head, but I'm sure it is not representative of our country. Then next one, don't just wait for people at the table to invite you to the table. Also, be proactive. Seek support and help. There are a lot of givers out there. There's a fantastic book by Adam Grant, who's someone who's influenced me from University of Pennsylvania. It's called Give and Take. There's givers out there, there's takers out there. I think there's a lot of research that givers actually wind up better off in terms of happiness and in terms of results in life. A lot of people will help you out. Adam Grant, who's like a famous psychologist and leadership executive, I connected with him on LinkedIn, and he's responded to me. He's giving me feedback on my business that I'm starting up, and he is incredibly busy and important, and he's just willing to do that. So people will give their time, especially if you ask in a humble and respectful way and tell them and ask them specifically what sort of help you're seeking. Third is persevere. So some people give up because they've interviewed 4 times at Google, or they've interviewed at like 12 different companies and got no. Get back in the game, figure out what you're doing wrong, work with a friend, a colleague, an organization to figure out how to improve, and have that growth mindset and persevere. Build your network. Like everybody in this room here, I don't know if Natasha is going to send out the list of people that joined here, but there's probably some like-minded people in this room that may have some value, like not like of interest and value, and be able to help one another out. So build your network, invest time in networking. You can't have coffees now or beers with people, but it's very easy to have a Zoom call with people. And nurture your network. So don't just build it, remain active on it. So if you meet someone and you think down the road that, oh, I'm just going to name a random name out here, Cameron, like, oh, I know Cameron was really interested in bunnies. And I just met a pet store owner who is trying to create a bunny hatchery. I don't know, it's a very bad example. And then I'd be like, oh, let me reach out to Cameron and put her in touch with this bunny hatchery. I don't know if that's a word, but the bunny nursery type business. So the more you have in your network, you nurture that network, you stay in touch, especially during COVID times when there's not much else to do. I've just reached out to some people in my LinkedIn network, and there's some research calling like a loose network versus a tight network. People that you're loosely connected to are actually more valuable when you meet with them because you haven't spoken to them for like years and years. When I speak to my mom this week, we do on our Monday evening Zoom call, yeah, I'll find out what she ordered at Costco this week, and I'll find out what's going on with what the temperature is in Long Island. But I'm not going to like get the value of when I just met with someone that I worked with 2 years ago, and I found out what he's up to, what he's looking for, and how I can help him and how he can help me. And so I'm not saying not to meet with your mom and not to talk to your mom, but those loose connections are really valuable. You can provide a lot more help for them, and they can probably provide a lot more insight to you. And then finally, feel free to reach out to me and ask for help. If I can help you, I'll be happy to help. If I can't help you, you can feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. I always post things there. And that's all I got in this presentation. Now I will, and that is exactly 30 minutes, Natasha. So I think that was the request to do 30 minutes. So I had my phone in front of me, so I am on time there. So hopefully there's some questions here. Otherwise, people can get a lot of time up. And I see Grace Dawson's picture. Is that a Cairn Terrier you have there?
No, it's a schnoodle actually.
Ah, okay. I'm big. We have 2 cockapoos, but it did look like
very close.
But
very close.
I saw the terrier. I saw a terrier in half that picture. So anyway.